Antonio Conte returned to Chelsea in the Premier League once again, as Chelsea took on Tottenham. Tottenham were looking to build on their momentum from the previous game, where they came back to win in the final minute of additional time. This game was a tough game for Spurs though, as Chelsea dominated proceedings, winning 2-0 thanks to a wonder strike from Hakim Ziyech and a Thiago Silva goal from inside the box. In this video I will analyse how Chelsea dominated possession and how they stopped Spurs coming back into the game in the second half. Chelsea lined up in a slightly different formation to what we are used to. Thomas Tuchel decided to go with a 4-3-3 shape, and this suited Ziyech and Mount in particular on the right. Lukaku was flanked by Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech. Antonio Conte also changed his formation for this game, choosing a 4-4-2 instead of his regular 3-5-2 or 3-4-3. Bergwijn earning a starting place alongside Kane. Looking at the average positions, we can see that Tottenham were much deeper than Chelsea and almost have a back five. Starting with a 4-4-2, Tottenham only pressed Chelsea with their front two, and this meant that Chelsea were able to progress the ball through the first phase quite easily by using their fullbacks. Tottenham were intent on stopping Chelsea using their central midfielders to control the game. To do this, they used their wide players in the centre, and this created a 4 versus 3 at times. This did however leave the flanks more open, and Chelsea looked to take advantage of this, especially on the right hand side, where they had 51% of their attacks. Chelsea on the ball now, with 2 players on the flanks. Tottenham had to match them with their fullbacks and winger. With the fullback dragged out of position, this now left room for Lukaku to run into the channels. And with Lukaku's strength, we would often see him hold up the ball and wait for his teammates to join him. With Tottenham having the ball on the right, Ziyech dropped back behind Mount to provide an option for a pass, and this overloaded the right, with Azpilicueta, Ziyech and Mount all combining in a tight area. This pulled the Tottenham players to the right, and in turn opened up space on the left for Ziyech to switch play to Hudson-Odoi. After some time, Chelsea changed their shape from a standard 4-3-3 into more of a 4-2-4 shape. Kovacic became more like a second pivot alongside Jorginho in the midfield, and this forced Doherty to mark him while Winks was on Jorginho. This saw Mount take up a much higher line on the right hand side, taking the attention of Højbjerg or Sessegnon, and this forced Tottenham to form a 5-3-2. So with only 3 in the midfield, the Chelsea defence shifted round to the right when in possession. Malang Sarr could be a third centre-back, but we could also see him joining the midfield at times too. Azpilicueta pushed up into the space in midfield. Mount's position can be seen as being partly responsible for the goal. It's his position in the front line that takes the attention of Davies and Sessegnon, and creates a little space for Ziyech. Although we shouldn't take anything away from Ziyech, as it was a wonder strike right into the top corner. Because Tottenham were very narrow from the front, when out of possession it left space in the channels, and Chelsea started to use this more and more as the game went on, leaving only Jorginho in the middle. Kovacic and Mount operated in the half spaces in front of Tottenham's back line. This saw them combine with the winger and try to penetrate the area behind the defence with through balls and crosses for Lukaku. Mount and Ziyech were very effective throughout the game, combining and making space for each other. Here Mason Mount runs into the channels taking a defender with him, and this opens up space for Ziyech to cut inside on his left foot and get a shot away. This is important for Ziyech, as he is not a player that can beat a player with pace and power. Instead, he needs players around him so that he can find the pass or a shot. Out of possession though, and in transitions, the 2 attacking midfielders would take up positions in front of the pivot, and the 2 wingers would drop back and cover the area in front of the fullbacks. At 2-0 down, Tottenham changed their formation with substitutes, switching to a 4-3-3 to match Chelsea. Chelsea would not press Tottenham when building from the back. Tottenham used a single pivot and pushed their attacking midfielders forward. However, whereas Tottenham defended with 2 strikers, Chelsea only had 1, and this meant that they had an extra man in the midfield to block off passing lanes to the 3 forwards. From Tottenham's goal kick, Chelsea were very active and aggressive in pressing, using 5 players to close down the player with the ball and cutting out passing options. This meant that Tottenham had no choice but to try and play the ball up to their forwards without going through the midfield. They would play the ball to the flanks, but Chelsea squeezed up in a 4-1 shape and could often see them win the ball back easily. This saw Chelsea control the game with 65% possession and having 606 passes compared to Tottenham's 341. Although Chelsea controlled the game for large parts and Tottenham didn't offer much going forward, it took a wonder strike from Ziyech to take the lead. This though was created because of good work between Mount, Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi. This win and Manchester City's loss means Chelsea have closed some ground but are still a long way behind. If you like this kind of stuff, please consider dropping a like and subscribing.